two, one. Hello and welcome to part 2 of our Wandavision video. I'm here with Sean Harris, David Ingram,
Hello there.
and Jack Parker.
Hello there.
If you haven't seen part 1, please click the link in the description. So, let's start off talking about our theories from last time. We were mostly wrong, as were probably a lot of people. I mean, Sean, you said one of yours was right. Would you like to talk about that first?
Yeah, so the one I was correct about was that Agatha would still be around at the end of the series. Obviously, it's sort of, we don't know whether she's going to be coming back. She is still currently locked in Westview. Yeah, so she's still alive. So, she might not necessarily come back, but there's that possibility.
David, were any of yours right?
I mean, I'm kind of a bit like Sean, really, at the moment. Like, I thought that Agatha was going to live. She did live, and she's been trapped in Westview, obviously, as we've said. And I kind of was right about the visions mixing together, because the Westview vision did kind of implant the emotions into, or sort of make the White Vision see his true self then. But it wasn't quite the way I imagined it. I imagined them to actually have like an actual blending experience. So I was kind of right, but I was also wrong at the same time. And obviously I didn't see Doctor Strange, so I was wrong on that front as well.
And Jack, were any of your theories right?
I think that one of them was what David said, where the visions sort of, they didn't merge together, but one did unlock the other. So I think that kind of counts, but I mean, maybe it really doesn't. The only thing I did guess for the Vision, or based around Vision's death, was that Wanda would have to sacrifice him or kill him again, or accept that he had to go. And she did. She actually had to let him go. I mean, you can see even when she lets go, like, she holds on to him for almost as long as possible. He's other than her engagement ring and wedding band, he's the last thing to disappear along with the house. So you can even see, even in the last moments when she did have to let him go, she was holding on to him for as long as possible. But I think that was it. Everything else, like with supernatural beings or Doctor Strange or anything, we were way off like that. If it is happening, it certainly didn't happen yet. So
unfortunately, none of mine were correct. It's quite interesting to see in retrospect, looking back at like interviews and stuff. Apparently, they've said since that they actually never planned for anything like Mephisto. They didn't really want a big baddie. Obviously, you still had Agatha, but it was more a character piece for Wanda rather than an epic battle type thing. Honestly, I don't mind too much. Obviously, it's always disappointing when you get your hopes up for this great comic character to return or this epic scene, but at the same time, it's not the end of the world if it doesn't happen. Quite interestingly, I can't remember which one of you found it, but there was that interview. They also said that Doctor Strange was supposed to be in the finale, but obviously, unfortunately, due to the pandemic, filming got pushed back, and unfortunately, they couldn't get schedules to work, which is a shame. But at the same time, I think it did work without him. And obviously, we'll be seeing him fairly soon in Doctor Strange 2, Multiverse of Madness, when that comes out.
Sorry, Ollie, leading on from that point of, obviously, you thought it worked quite well. In my opinion, I thought that obviously, we were all looking forward to Doctor Strange being in the end. And yes, it was a bit disappointing that he wasn't. But at the same time, I think it, like we've sort of covered, it was Wanda's story. It's, as I quoted it before, it's the Scarlet Witch film that we're never going to get, but in serialized form. And I think really we wanted to focus on Scarlet Witch in this instance. And I think it was probably, it did it the better of the good. Sorry. It was the sort of best of a bad situation then, shall we say. It was probably for the better.
I'm the same with sort of like, I was a little bit disappointed with the lack of Doctor Strange, but obviously, we know that Wanda is going to be in Doctor Strange 2, so it's sort of, we don't know how that film's going to begin or like how it's going to link in with WandaVision. So it's sort of what they had planned for WandaVision could still happen at the start of Doctor Strange, or at some point in Doctor Strange. So it's not. We might still see what they had planned, just not in WandaVision.
Jack, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I think that I'm glad that we had like this extra time with Wanda and Vision, because before this show, all we got was little Easter eggs or like small hints towards their developing relationship in Civil War, especially, or in Avengers Infinity War. But we didn't really, I think until this show, I wasn't quite, even though I'm aware of their relationship in the comics, I wasn't quite sold on their relationship. But this show really does sell you on, even though it's not technically the real Vision or whatever, it does sell, like Darcy says, the love was real. And I think that it does serve as all the stuff we wish we'd have gotten before now. It sort of allows us to indulge ourselves and just have a bit of fun with the characters, which you can't really do when, you know, Iron Man and Captain America are fighting over the Sokovia Accords, or Thanos is going to murder half the universe. You don't have time. But with a TV show, you get way longer than a movie, and we got the time to see those characters, maybe not develop, but sort of confirm what we thought we knew about them and add a few extra things as well.
Going on top of that as well, I think, you know, sort of the way they showed the relationship in this series, it really did sort of, they felt like a couple, and you could, I mean, like, you know, like you said, and like it said on the show, you know, you can sort of, the love is real, and you can tell there's love for each other, and you wouldn't really get that looking at you know, Age of Ultron, Civil War, Infinity War. You wouldn't really get that as much as if you watch this.
So, away from our theories, what did you guys think of the finale? Jack, would you like to go first?
Sure. So before we go into like a breakdown of what actually happened in the episode, I think I enjoyed it. I understand a few people don't like that it's this show was so unique and people want to hold on to that. The fact it ends in a big CGI battle, you know, it's almost I've heard a comparison with Wonder Woman, where like the first two acts of Wonder Woman are very character driven, and then it ends with random CGI battle, you know. But I think it's unfair to compare it with that, because it made sense. Like this was all built up, like it wasn't out of left field. So I think that I certainly enjoyed seeing Agatha get her comeuppance basically, and I did like the way the two visions handled their differences. Like sure they were fighting initially, but then when they actually had a philosophical debate essentially, I thought that was a very interesting way to handle their conflict. So I was happy with the episode. Not to mention, I love Wanda's new costume. So I'm glad that she's now the Scarlet Witch and looks like that, because I've been waiting. I mean, we did get a Halloween episode with her comic accurate costume, but this is a nice blend, I think, of the two. So I really enjoyed the episode.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more actually with everything that Jack has just said, really. There, the reveal of Wanda as the Scarlet Witch right at the end was probably one of my personal highlights of the episode. Like the whole episode, is just to summarize before we go into the nitty gritty, I would say the whole episode generally pleased me. There are bits that I would have preferred if they'd have changed a little. They could have, based on, obviously it's kind of a little bit because we were hyping ourselves up for something that wasn't going to happen, clearly because of circumstances beyond their control. But I do think as a whole, I enjoyed the finale, the vision on vision battle, and like Jack said, the way that they resolved their differences between them, and then obviously the events that it led to, that was great. The Agatha stuff with the runes and everything like that, brilliant. Loved it. And all the ending, the conclusion, I feel like that's a really good cliffhanger. The cliffhanger that we're left with of Agatha and what's next for her, maybe or may not be, I think it's generally quite a good thing to leave that character on, because she's a little bit, in my opinion, I'll get more into this later, but I think she's going to be like the female Loki, essentially. Hopefully, I'd love her to be the female Loki of like the next phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, because she's such a quirky character. She brought a lot of uniqueness to the show, and I think she'd be a brilliant addition to the movie lineup, just as much as she has been to this show.
Touching on the outfit, I think it was a very interesting take on the classic outfit, and you know, like Jack said, it's a nice blend of what we saw in her previous costumes, as well as sort of linking it with the more accurate costume that we saw in the Halloween episode. And yeah, I think I was very pleased with the finale and what it showed. And
one thing, obviously, Dave said, I think with Agatha, Catherine Hahn is amazing. In fact, she's managed to take She's been in 2 Marvel-based projects as a secret villain, and has completely smashed both roles, is amazing. It says a lot for her as an actress. A lot more of her like clips and stuff has started surfacing online, and she's very good. I mean, she's definitely the right choice for Agnes and Agatha. And like David said, I really hope we do see her again in some form. Costume also looks really nice. I remember when the trailer came out, and obviously they were talking about the Halloween costume. Everyone was like, "Oh, it's a really nice nod. It's really nice to see it on film." And I don't think anyone really expected to see a completely movie style version of the costume come out by the end of the series, which is really nice. And obviously, I can't wait to see it again in Doctor Strange 2.
Add one more thing since we're talking about the costume. I might as well mention this now. The costume has a few little nods on it. So it's got the shape of the Mind Stone around her neck. There's like a hole there, so that's a little hint to Vision. It's also contained, because it's obviously it's a bit of a darker red than we're used to seeing Wanda wearing. But I think because she takes, I mean, this is taken from the episode, because she takes Agatha's magic, which is purple, it sort of merges her classic lighter red color with the purple. And on her legs as well, there are blue stripes. And if we remember, the other witch's magic was blue. So, and Agatha stole their magic. So in stealing Agatha's, she's got a bit of their magic, a bit of her magic. And I think the costume sort of symbolizes all of that coming together. Like, I mean, it literally manifested in the scene where she took Agatha's magic. So I think it all makes sense that it happened all in one go. The one thing I did want was a cape for her. But luckily, in the Hot Toys figure that they've revealed images of, you can now pre-order, she does actually have a cape. So I assume that in Doctor Strange 2, she'll reveal a cape. And I did think of something quite funny, actually, that could happen. If we all remember in Age of Ultron, when Vision first was born, he looks at Thor and then manifests a cape after looking at him. And since Wanda can create stuff with her magic now, she might look at Doctor Strange in his cloak of levitation and mimic Vision and create her own cape, which I think would be really fun. I could see them doing that.
No, definitely. It would be nice to see that if that was the case. Away from that, talking about some more controversial things from the episode. Ralph, let's start with that. Obviously, we all suggested Ralph might be Mephisto or the Bunny. I don't think anyone guessed that Ralph would be Pietro.
Yeah.
I feel like I might have mentioned it, but I can't actually remember if I did or not.
You have to watch part 1 to find out.
I'm the same as well. I think that, it was sort of, it could have been, the lead into the X-Men. It could have been sort of expressing more of the multiverse, and the fact that it was just sort of, oh, he's an actor, it's a boner joke, and all that. I was very disappointed with what they did with Evan Peters, and I think they wasted his return. And I think Ralph could have easily have been some other it didn't have to be Evan Peters. It could have been anyone else. And I think it's I was very disappointed in what they did with Evan Peters coming back.
I'm very, very, to put it lightly, annoyed that they used the whole Ralph, so Pietro, they wasted Pietro on a boner joke. I can see that there's some humor in that because it fits with the whole comedic tone of the show, and it's like, oh, it's super serious battles and stuff in the final episode, and we'll break the tension with a boner joke. Fair enough, but like when that boner joke is inflicted on something that I was convinced was going to be an opening to the multiverse and suggesting that Wanda had pulled people from a different universe, and that was how we opened the multiverse, and she made a crack in the universe to breach like these different universes and bring them together. That was my initial idea, but the fact that he was just a boner joke at the end of it, and like to me, obviously some people have said afterwards that he's probably more significant than you realize, maybe in future events, possibly. And like there's a really bad theory going on, which I know Jack hates, about somebody being in witness protection and he having to change his name, but I genuinely don't. I just think it was a choice idea that I decided to go with, and I don't like it at all.
So I would agree that it was disappointing, but I think the reason behind it, I mean, obviously it was supposed to like confuse the audience. Like we think we know what's going on, and we clearly did. But I also think it's a reference. So, well, if I'll start with the theory that David mentioned. So there's a theory going around because Jimmy Woo was looking for a missing person, and then it ended up being a missing town. And people have assumed that, oh, the witness protection person could be Quicksilver, and he's got a fake name of Ralph. But the problem is, when you're in witness protection, you're not allowed to go in for acting gigs or anything that draws attention to yourself. And since he has a headshot, which is how Monica like works out who he is, as well as the electric bill, he wouldn't have that. He wouldn't be allowed to have that. So I think people are grasping at straws to please be the X-Men Quicksilver, when let's be honest, it was just a joke. And I also think that the reason he's called Ralph Boner is because the director of WandaVision, Matt Shackman, was a child actor on Just the 10 of Us, which is a Growing Pains spin-off. And obviously one of the big characters in Growing Pains was Boner. So I think it's a subtle nod to Growing Pains. And since Pietro was introduced at the end of, the era for Growing Pains, I think it was all supposed to be like, it all ties together once even though I think it's a waste of Evan Peters, but I mean, it still works. It still works for the audience and for the plot. So I'm not too torn up about it. Like, I'm still expecting Wanda to do multiverse stuff in the next film anyway, so I'm not too worried about it.
Fair points. I wouldn't say I was disappointed. I think by the time the finale ran around, I was slightly worried there was going to be too much going on, which is why in sort of part one I said I was hoping it was going to be feature length. The fact maybe they did skip it, I can see why people would be disappointed, but personally I wasn't. But at the same time, I've not seen the X-Men films, so I wouldn't have that same connection. Obviously, with what Jack said about Wanda doing multiverse stuff, obviously there's definitely got to be something on with the multiverse in the next film. It's in the title, so it'd be interesting to see if this is made as a nod to it. Doctor Strange was supposed to come out just after WandaVision originally. It could, and obviously Wanda is going to be in it. I imagine there must be some link. I don't think the story is over yet, and I think they have said that all the series are going to lead into films in one way or another. So obviously, I think it would be interesting to see if they do, and I really do hope they do go through a bit more.
So what were you guys' opinion on White Vision or the other Vision? What was your take on the character?
He's an interesting one because, like, obviously when they introduced him in that end credit scene where it's like this is what Hayward's been working on. Hayward's been deceiving everyone the entire time, making people think that Wanda stole his body when actually she didn't. She just fabricated her own. It struck me as being quite typical in the sense of like, oh, there's one version. It kind of reminded me, it sounds a bit weird to say out loud, but it reminded me a bit of like when you get the Hulk and the Abomination. So you get the Hulk that already exists, and then there's something that's got to equal it. So like in most comic books and most sort of comic book based adventures, there's always an equal or opposite sort of character or villain that has roughly around the same powers or instant sort of facets, then shall we say, of the original. And this is literally because in this case, Vision is literally original Vision. He's just painted white. But I don't know. I think it was an interesting little thing. I kind of, on one hand, I think that they could have got away with not having second Vision because of obviously he didn't do a literal merger like I thought he would have done. But at the same time, it was kind of nice, like the ship, going back to the ship of Theseus moment. I kind of enjoyed that little way of bringing that philosophical kind of debate, because obviously he's an android. Both versions are an android in some respect. So, be one of them fabricated from chaos magic or not. They're both androids. And I think it was kind of a nice thing to sort of like not going too over the top in terms of, do robots have feelings, all that sort of stuff. Like, we're all past that. We've seen that too much in films. But I think that little moment where they sort of one switched the other on, I think it was a nice tender moment, I think, which sounds very weird to say, a tender moment between two androids. Definitely say he's a nice addition, I would say, but I kind of wouldn't have missed him personally if something else had come along. If Tyler Hayward had created something else to battle Vision in the Hex. But no, it was a nice addition, I thought.
Just like David, I thought it was a very good addition to the series, and a sort of a secondary villain sort of, or like a problem, another problem for them to overcome. And I really liked sort of seeing the two Visions fight, and again the Ship of Theseus stuff. And I think it's a very interesting way of keeping the door open for Paul Bettany to return with White Vision, and potentially what that could mean if White Vision did come back. What it'd mean for Wanda, and just sort of the opportunities it would bring. I just really liked the fight, and the stuff with where it was the two Visions talking and all of that stuff. I just loved it.
Haven't got too much more to add to that, really. Obviously, I do kind of wish maybe it'd come in slightly sooner. I think sort of by the time it came, I think it needed that bit more of a push to be sort of realize a bit more how it was going to affect Wanda and Vision. I do think Paul Bettany played it perfectly. He's obviously really good. I think he's a really good actor. And obviously, having to play against himself was a really nice thing to see. I do hope he kind of returns and we get to see a form of Vision again. It would be nice to see.
Like I enjoyed them bringing White. It's a bit different from the comics, obviously, but there's a lot of ties. So in the comics, for instance, I mean, Vision isn't made from Tony Stark and Jarvis and Bruce Banner. It's the original Human Torch and Wonder Man's brainwaves put together, still created by Ultron, but obviously, and there's a bit of Hank Pym in there because Hank Pym created Ultron in the comics. White Vision is after Vision was kidnapped in the night. One day, Wanda wakes up and he's gone, and he's been taken. He's been dismantled, and when they rebuild him, because of the damage done to his, the brain waves and everything that made Vision, he comes back completely white, colorless, and soulless. Like, he's not recognized. Wanda goes up to greet him, and he doesn't recognize her. He doesn't feel for her anymore. And when they try to get his memories back, because of the process of having your mind scanned is very painful, Wonder Man refuses to do it again, even though Wanda asks him to, because she wants Vision back, because they're in love. I think the way they handled bringing his memories back in this episode with the debate, which I loved, and with him essentially one Vision giving the other their memories, I think that was a better way to handle it than the comics did, because it became very convoluted in the comics. I mean, eventually Vision gets his memories back. In this, I think it was a nice twist to have the two Visions be separate. Like, what would it be like in the comics if regular Vision spoke to White Vision? I mean, how horrified would he be to see himself soulless and emotionless? Another thing I would say from the episode, I really liked how after he's tries to crush Wanda's head and Vision saves her, it almost looks like Terminator. Like, he gets back up and there's fire behind him. He looks like T-800. I really like the way they did treat him like this is a threat now, because if Vision is truly a living weapon without a soul, what damage could he do without any morals? What kind of damage? I mean, when we even see Vision accidentally cripple Rhodey in Civil War, and even though that was because of emotion, he made that mistake. Imagine what damage White Vision could have continued to do if Wanda's Vision didn't unlock his memories. He'd have just destroyed everything. He probably would have killed Hayward as well, because Hayward had no control over him, not really. So I'm glad they sort of wrapped that up very quickly. I still want to know where he flew off to, though, but I guess we'll find out in future Marvel stories.
Is there anything anyone would like to add about the episode?
Well, there's one thing that's finally confirmed by the episode. I don't know if we mentioned this last week or not, and that was the Darkhold. So the book that Agatha had in her basement is confirmed to be the Darkhold, which is the Book of the Damned from Marvel Comics. Now, unfortunately, this sort of concrete proves that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Runaways are not canon to this new Marvel Cinematic Universe TV universe that they're creating. I think Kevin Feige said about a year ago that he was wiping the slate clean. So even though Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ran past the events of Thanos by I think 2 seasons, people were still holding hope out there. It was like, oh well, because of their time travel shenanigans, like it can still fit in, but unfortunately it doesn't. What the Dark Code will probably be is it'll probably be very important to Doctor Strange too, and possibly Blade as well, because it. If you guys remember in Doctor Strange, the Ancient Ones collection, the Dark Code looks way older than even that. So I think that it would be something that Doctor Strange will probably want to take from Wanda because it's dangerous. I mean, it's certainly very dangerous in the comics, and even on Agents of Shield, looking at it made you crazy. So God knows what it's doing to Wanda. Obviously, I mean, we'll talk about this in a moment with the after credit scenes, but because the Darkhold claims that Scarlet Witch will destroy the world, it possibly means, like, in terms of multiverse, so like could destroy the worlds or more than one world. I mean, who knows which one it's referring to, which obviously could relate to the end credit scene when she hears her children's voices. But the other thing is that because the Darkhold says that Wanda is not born, she's forged, that could relate to the Mind Stone, but could also relate to, I'm going to butcher this name, Chithon, which is the god of chaos, who wrote the Darkhold in the comics. And he's one of the elder gods in the Marvel Universe. All the elder gods basically degenerated over time into demons because they kept warring with each other. And in the comics, he's the one who cursed Wanda as a baby. He also possessed her and even possessed Quicksilver as well at one point. He's also sort of related to Morgan Le Fay, which did appear in the Runaways. I know I just said it wasn't canon, but it's still a small connection there. So I think that it's possible that he could have a future role, perhaps the villain of Doctor Strange too, because I don't know if you guys, the book glows orange. Well, if you watch when Agatha is like tied up by her coven, before she takes over everyone's magic, before it turns from blue to purple, there's a bit of orange in the air. And I think that last week we had the theory that she could be drawing her power from somewhere else. And it could be that she, because of reading the Darkhold, it's possible that his spirit, or he speaks through the book, instead of him being the creator or writer of the book, he could almost be the book. I mean, that's a theory, which means that Wanda could be drawing upon that power now, which could be dangerous. I mean, which would have massive implications in Doctor Strange if it were true. I think it could all tie together, or it could be nothing. I guess we'll have to wait and see.
You mentioned about both the mid credits and end credit scenes there. What did you guys think of those?
I preferred personally the mid-credit scene to the end credit scene. Whilst the end credit scene is very exciting because, like Jack, we've mentioned the Darkhold, it's got her astral form, so a little nod to Doctor Strange, obviously, because we've got her, like, she's just sat in this really beautiful landscape in this little cabin in like the woods kind of thing going on there, and she's sat there sort of getting over her loss of vision again, and then she's there in her astral form in a Scarlet Witch costume, and she's currently studying, trying to search for what the answers and various other things that she's thinking about and that are on her mind since she's become the Scarlet Witch. And obviously we hear the voices of her kids, and obviously that could be a potential. She's hearing voices of her children from another universe, versions of another universe, or there might still be a connection to the Shards of Mephisto in that as well, because they could be real, and that could be something that could come back in Doctor Strange too, that they are very much real. They were the only real things that were implanted into Wanda, because there's actually a theory going around as well. I think, I can't remember the video, but someone did actually say that even Wanda seems a bit surprised back in episode 3, or end of episode 2 into episode 3, when she becomes pregnant. All of a sudden she seems surprised as well. There could still be some sort of outside interference and reference to the Shards of Mephisto in that, but yeah, generally I don't know, it didn't feel like the end credit scene that I would have wanted personally, because I think that it wasn't very final. It felt very like, that's something, but you want more. For me, I wanted just a little bit extra to sort of feel like it had finished. Like, I know that's a cliffhanger into the film. That's what the end credit scenes do. They are cliffhangers into next stories. I know it after her flying off at the end of the episode, I still felt that there was a little bit of it hadn't quite fit. It felt incomplete to me. The mid-credit scene, though, was my favorite and probably the most simple, but my most favorite one, which links to Captain Marvel 2, a nice setup for Captain Marvel 2, because we get one of the, I think it's one of the FBI agents or whatever she is, sword agents, comes by, and she's a Skrull, and she comes to recruit Monica to presumably bring her up to space to join Nick Fury and hopefully Captain Marvel, and thus setting up Captain Marvel 2. I think that was a brilliantly done scene, and I think that it really sort of excites you for like, oh, what's the adventure going to be, and we're ready for this now. Whereas I think there's a lot more questions and a lot more theory based, debate that can be created from the end credit scene. I think it was more certainty created in the mid credit scene and more questions created by the end credit scene.
I really did like the end credit scene. I really hope that this isn't the end of the WandaVision story. I still hope there is more out there, obviously with White Vision being out there and her hearing the sounds of her two kids, that the story in Doctor Strange will be a sufficient enough continuation and extended ending to what we got in the WandaVision, because I've really enjoyed what they've shown us so far, so I hope there is more to come.
I think as well with the sort of things that the mid and end credit scenes set up. So obviously you got the stuff about Doctor Strange and also Monica going up to space with those Skrulls. It's sort of the potential of what it could set up for Captain Marvel 2, Doctor Strange 2, and and sort of the fact that obviously this is happening before Spider-Man Far From Home. The idea that Monica is in space with Nick Fury at the time of Spider-Man, so it's sort of potential as well that could sort of bring. And obviously you've got Secret Wars is coming out eventually. That I think that's a series. I think with Nick Fury, and obviously Secret Wars is the Skrulls in the comics, and so the sort of potential that could lead it. This could sort of all lead into lots of different things. But yeah, I think I wouldn't be surprised if the stuff with Monica relates to Captain Marvel 2 at least. Obviously, with her going into space and now that she's got powers and everything, it'd be interesting to see how this ending sort of links in with other stuff. And again, like we've said, the Doctor Strange stuff and how Wanda's how it's gonna affect Doctor Strange and everything coming up.
You guys basically covered most of what I would say about those scenes. I enjoyed Monica getting her own scene to sort of set her up for Captain Marvel 2, especially when, I don't know what alias they're going to give her, whether it be Spectrum, Photon, or maybe she'll even replace Carol as Captain Marvel. Maybe she'll step down. We obviously don't know. But I do think that it's a nice payoff for those who did watch Captain Marvel, because I'm pretty sure Nick said something along the lines of, oh, you can join if you learn to glow like your Aunt Carol, or something along those lines. I don't know if that's the quote exactly. But obviously now she does. And we saw her prevent the boys from being shot at by Haywood by stopping the kinetic energy of the bullet. And she's obviously absorbed Wanda's powers before in an earlier episode. So I think it's nice that they've sort of given her origin story and then allowed us to have a little hint to where she's going to be going. For Wanda's, the actual end credit scene, I thought what I thought was interesting was that she was in her astro form, but she's not asleep. So every time we've seen someone in that form, they've been dying, asleep, unconscious. Even the ancient one was, unconscious when in that form, and so was Doctor Strange. So Wanda's already advanced enough to be walking around normally, and she's almost like dividing herself. Like that could be also related to multiverse thing, possibly. It might just be her powers, but she's already got the ability to, oh, I'm in astro form reading the Darkhold while I'm making myself some tea. She's already beyond what we've seen from Doctor Strange, which obviously confirms what Agatha said in the episode, which is that the Scarlet Witch is theorized to be more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme. The other thing I did like about that scene was it was all in one shot. It was very Evil Dead aesthetic, I thought, which might help get us comfortable with the way I presume Sam Raimi, who is directing Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, will be filming. And since we know Wanda is going to be in that film, I think it was almost like a little teaser for what we're going to be getting. So I thought that was quite interesting as well.
I think moving on from carrying on from the Sam Raimi thing, I think I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out that he did that scene as well, just sort of so it's still like Jack was saying about carrying on the same sort of method and tone and stuff of Doctor Strange. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out that he directed that scene.
One of the other things I wanted to talk about was the big cameo thing that was talked about. Obviously, it started off by Paul Bettany saying he was an actor he'd always wanted to work with. And we all guessed Doctor Strange, Nick Fury, and even some more of the obscure ones, sort of Ian McKellen or Patrick Stewart from X-Men. And it turned out to be Paul Bettany. I don't want to say it wasn't too fussed. It definitely seems to have been over sort of guessed. I believe, Sean, you said there was something about someone put it to being like the Luke Skywalker cameo in The Mandalorian, which obviously it wasn't really. Unfortunately, is what happens with rumors. They get talked about and someone will say something and it'll get taken the wrong way.
I would say, I mean, just a little fun little quickie here, because we are about to, we're as this is hopefully going out, we'll either be in the midst or Winter Soldier, Falcon and the Winter Soldier will be out. So maybe it was just all miscommunication. And we are going to get a Luke Skywalker style cameo. It'll be Old Man Steve and Winter Soldier. That'll be it. So it was never WandaVision all along. It was Captain America. But no, I genuinely, in terms of the cameo, I know it was very overhyped, and it's sad that because I have, like we've said before, it's sad that they couldn't do it because of obviously restrictions and the things that are going on in the world. But you can't, it's stuff you can't control. And whilst I would have loved to see Doctor Strange or Nick Fury or anyone like that appear in it, I kind of like the fact, I think we might have touched on this before, I like the fact that they left it to be Wanda's show. Well, it's Wanda and Vision, but Wanda specifically. This is Wanda's time, Vision's time, and we're not going to get distracted by a big cameo. So I think it was kind of making the best of a bad situation. As I said before, it's definitely a lesson in not reading too much into things, I suspect.
I didn't mind that we didn't get a big cameo. Of course, everyone was suspecting, like you said, all kinds of people. I mean, I think there was a few throwaway comments like, is Paul just joking and talking about himself because he's never worked with himself? I don't think anyone actually thought that would be the case. Like, it was like, nah, he wouldn't say that, After it happened, I don't think I'm that annoyed because, I mean, we said it last episode. We didn't want the show, like Wanda or Vision or even the kids, to be overshadowed by someone else. And having Doctor Strange show up, especially in the fight scenes, could you imagine if instead of Wanda outsmarting Agatha, Doctor Strange just showed up and did it? Like, how much of a letdown would that have been, So I think it was good that, like you said, that it kept to being about Wanda and about being about Vision.
With the comments about the cameo and everything, I think that's what sort of, I think if they didn't say anything and it was White Vision voiced by Paul Bettany, all of that, I think that would have been a lot better than if, with obviously how they'd made comments on the cameo and how it's a massive cameo and Paul Bettany really wants to work, all of that. I think if they didn't do any of that, I think the second Vision voiced by Paul, I think it would have landed a lot better than the sort of the expectation for Doctor Strange, Nick Fury, and anyone else that comments online were saying about. I think they just sort of went around it the wrong way.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, to be fair. Like, I think because our expectations were raised so high through miscommunication and through, an interviewer taking one thing that Elizabeth Olsen said and pretending that she said that there would be a Luke Skywalker level cameo when there wasn't. I think us basically merging that lie with what Paul actually said made us think, oh, we're going to get Magneto or we're going to get Doctor Strange or whatever. But I'm sort of glad, well, like I said before, I'm glad that it's stuck to its own story, even though it is within the greater MCU. I'm glad that it's a contained story and we didn't have some random person show up at the end. Because I think, like we said last week, it would cheapen. So I'm sort of the way it turned out. I'm perfectly happy with.
Definitely, you've got to agree there. I mean, one of the big problems I had with it, I felt that characters, especially Darcy and Jimmy, did get sort of sidelined in the finale. So I think having someone else would have made it even worse. So I'm kind of glad they didn't do it. I think the only one that would really possibly have worked would have been Doctor Strange. But like Jack said, it wouldn't have been the same. It wouldn't have worked well for Wanda if she'd had this other person coming in and saving the day for her. I mean, they might have just done it so he just appeared in like the end credit scenes, but I think, like Jack said, it's WandaVision's story. It needs to be there. It needs to be about them.
May I talk about some Easter eggs?
You may indeed.
So the first one, I'll just change my background picture, is this is the cover from the House of M comic book. So a lot of WandaVision took ideas from this story. And if you notice, if you look at behind me, you can see these weird shapes that Wanda is made from. And if you notice, when Vision starts to come apart, and so does the boys, they are breaking into these shapes. Same when she forms the house together, it's also these shapes as well. So I think, like, because we're so used to all the hexes everywhere from previous episodes, I like that they brought in this sort of reality altering the shapes from the story that they're borrowing a lot from. So that was quite interesting. I also liked that, I think me and David noticed this, which was
we did.
that the Agatha in the opening, when Wanda does the old Civil War and hits her with a car, she is left with, in the rubble, and you just see her boots, which is exactly like the Wicked Witch from Wizard of Oz. A lot of her, I mean, even her riding her bike around was very like that. Even, well, killing the dog, very Wicked Witch. So I thought, like, the final, they even took the time to have that tiny little one last Easter egg, one little goof about that. So I thought that was quite nice as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree with that. And I just a quick little point from me, really, because like Jack said, I noticed this as well. I noticed literally immediately as soon as you could see the legs, I was like, that looks so much like the Wizard of Oz, and it definitely is. And like Jack said, one thing I'd never actually really picked up on was the idea that obviously killing the dog, the Wicked Witch and Wizard of Oz wants to kill the dog, so that's actually quite obvious now I think about it. But yeah, I loved little touches like that. The fact that it's not just this TV show is an homage to classic sitcoms, but it's also a great homage to like cinematic techniques, cinema itself, because obviously it is part of the MCU, so cinematic universe. So a little bit of light-hearted fun Easter egg is inclusion is great, and I loved it. It was a nice little nod there that I was like, oh, that's great. But yeah, I loved that bit.
The final Easter egg I can think of off the top of my head was when the family come together, they do a nice pose, and that may remind you of the Incredible, which I thought it probably was a direct reference to, because in an earlier episode, playing at the theater was the Incredibles. So I doubt that wasn't intentional. And also when Agatha, was it Agatha or might have been Haywood, actually, I'm not sure. I think it might have been Agatha. Wanda creates like a round shield to protect the boys, and that almost looks like Violet's shield from the Incredibles as well. So I think I'm almost certain that was intentional. So I thought that was quite fun as well.
Yeah, in one of the sort of notes I made about it was I called it the Incredibles moment, where it's like the family and like they're sort of they're against all the soldiers and with the shield and everything. It's sort of it is a nice little nod to Incredibles, and like Jack said about it being playing in the cinema and everything. I did like that little nod.
Oh, not an Easter egg, but a payoff. So if we remember, I mean, obviously we did discuss the Ralph reveal, but before that, Monica is trapped in Ralph's house, and no one can hear her while she's in there. And if you remember that when Agatha is revealed, Tommy says, "I like your house, Agatha. Like, it's quiet. You're quiet." And I think that because of the magic of the house, you can't hear outside of it. So that was the indication that something was amiss. And obviously, when we got Agatha's reveal, we were like, "Oh, okay, it was obvious." But it continues into this episode where Monica can't contact the outside world because the house has this, I don't know what you want to call it, a charm or hex or whatever, that prevents you from hearing the outside world or them hearing you either. So I think it was quite nice that they kept that consistent as well.
So before we move off the finale, anyone else think they'd like to add?
I think I'd like to just sort of close this really off really with the fact that the entire show, I think, you know, from its technical makeup to the creative decisions made, from aspect ratio choices to, you know, the tone of it, everything, and the mixture of, you know, it's classic fun Marvel stuff that we're used to. We used to fun quippiness in Marvel, but also with, you know, the superhero stuff. I think the show as a whole has been quite a good experiment, because lots of people were skeptical after episodes 1 and 2 because it was very much just like a traditional sitcom, apart from like 2 like moments in each episode where it was very much not a sitcom and it was a little bit more, oh, what's going on, like but even then that was an homage to the Twilight Zone because of the weird and wonderful like slanty angle. But no, I think overall this show has been more than I expected when I first went into it.
As you mentioned, David, they actually confirmed in the behind the scenes that when something goes wrong, they were inspired by the Twilight Zone, and that's what they were pulling from. So you got that right, because that's what they went to. They talked about in the behind the scenes. They also mentioned that they were using era accurate equipment. So even the lighting they were using when they were doing the 50s and 60s was the lighting you would have used back then. So they really did go, I mean, I think we theorized it last week, but they did go the extra mile. They really were using the old techniques, like having Vision be painted blue so he appears red in black and white. Like simple things like that they had to redo. I do really appreciate that they did that on the whole show.
I think one of, you know, sort of so I'm a big fan of like Malcolm in the Middle and The Office, and obviously they had 2 episodes based around that sort of style. So I was a very big, you know, I really enjoyed those episodes specifically for the style. But obviously, yeah, but as an overall thing for the series, I sort of, you know, like we said in the original video, there's been nothing like this before, and you know, I was sort of very, you know, very pleased with sort of how they did the different eras and all the, you know, all the things they covered. But especially the Malcolm in the Middle and The Office inspired episodes. Yeah, so viewing the series as a whole now that it's over, I was very impressed. And as a sort of first series for Disney Plus, it sort of gives me a good, you know, it sort of gives me high hopes for what's going to come with Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki and all the things coming up next. Because originally I was sort of on the fence with it, but I think sort of now I'm glad I followed it week by week, and I think it would have had a different effect if I just waited and binged it all in one go. But I'm glad I sort of did it week by week.
I think I definitely would say probably my favorite's been was probably episode 7, where we finally got the big twist about Agatha. That was probably my favorite episode, but I wouldn't say it was an episode I ever found unwatchable. Obviously, like I said last time, episodes 1 and 2 weren't probably my favorite ones, but they worked in a way that let the rest of the series be what it needed to be. And I'm really glad that they did that, and it definitely sort of worked well for everything.
What was everyone else's favorite episodes? So I'd probably agree with Ollie. I think episode 7 is one of my favorites, especially, I mean, Agatha's, I mean, we'd probably ask the question, what's your favorite theme from the whole series, which would be Agatha. But I think I do enjoy that episode. Episode 8, I also really enjoyed, simply because of all the background information, not only on Agatha, but on Wanda. Like, what were the experiments like, her and Vision, like, first, like, opening up to each other and all that. I think that's the stuff. It's almost like all the stuff in episode 8 was, apart from the Agatha stuff, was stuff that you wish you saw in Age of Ultron. Like, it was almost like watching deleted scenes of Age of Ultron. I'd have loved it if they'd have brought back OG Quicksilver, but I guess they didn't really need to. It wouldn't have added anything to the plot. It would just been nice to have him be there with her. But yeah, other than that, I think I really enjoyed the whole show. And like Ollie said, episode 1 and 2, I was really skeptical about. To be honest, I didn't like episode 1. But then again, I don't like it when something's going to go wrong and you start cringing and you're like, oh no, you know, I hate that in shows. Like, I always want to like skip it.
No, same.
So because of that, like, I was like, oh no, Mr. Hart, no, you know, I really didn't want to deal with that. But I have rewatched the series from start to finish, and I did, on second viewing, I could obviously get through it, and it was still fine. It still holds up, and it's a lot of fun. And obviously, if you like the aesthetic of the 50s or 60s or whatever era, you're going to be drawn to those episodes. So I think, well, actually, on second thought, I think was Agatha's reveal. That wasn't the Halloween episode, was it? That was the episode before that.
Yeah, no, the Halloween episode was.
Yeah, I'll take that back. Halloween episode was my favorite, hands down. Not just because of the goofy costumes. No, I loved it. That's the one I think I'll rewatch the most.
The costumes are pretty amazing in that one. I love the quirkiness of episode 6, so the Halloween episode. And obviously, I think I love, obviously, my favorite WandaVision theme is probably the second one. So episode 2, where they pay homage to Bewitched, and they literally did the whole title sequence just like Bewitched. I love that. I absolutely love that because it was a literal recreation. Obviously, they did it with the other ones as well. I loved it because it's a cartoon and it's just so quintessentially 60s. It's brilliant. I loved it, and also I loved the little Easter egg as well. Episode 1, I love the fact that because you see them watching in the episode 8 previously on, you get to actually see. They actually recreated pretty much the plot of an episode of the Dick Van Dyke Show. Even though that's a 60s show, they did it in the 50s, which I thought was quite a nice little touch, really, personally. But yeah, overall, favorite WandaVision theme, episode 2, the Bewitched one. And then my favorite episode would be episode 7 because of the comedic style, the Modern Family twist of it all, and the camera movements and everything. And it was just I thought the bits with Vision where it's like, what am I doing sat here? I need to go. And he just goes, and it's really funny. Genuinely, that's probably the one I laughed at the most and thought was genuinely the funniest. And Agatha all along is my second favorite theme, probably my first favorite theme, but another one that's not the WandaVision one. So I love them. Just it's so catchy, and I'll always be singing along to it once in a while. It'd be just always stuck in my head.
Sean, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, so my favorite episodes were sort of episodes 6 and 7, the ones that are based off of, I'm a big fan of Malcolm in the Middle and The American Office, so them sort of doing that style, I was a big fan of that one. Those were my favorite episodes. But overall, I did love the whole series, but episodes 6 and 7 are my favorites.
A favorite theme, Sean?
Probably, again, like mixture of 6 and 7, just because I was a fan of the shows they were based off of. Yeah, I'd say a tie between episode 6 and 7.
I believe that's everything we've got for today, unless anyone's got anything they want to add.
No.
Did anyone have any more theories at all?
Not really. Obviously, I imagine we'll see Vision and the family again in some form, probably in Doctor Strange 2.
I'll quickly add that I think we obviously assume Agatha will play a role in the future. But remember, her rooms are still up in the basement. So if she just walks down there, won't she be free of Wanda's control? That's how she might regain control of herself.
Yeah, fair point.
Especially with her line like, "Not if I see you first, hon." I'm expecting her to show up.
Sort of civilian Agatha. It's she's not a different person. She's still got her powers essentially, and it's sort of so she could break free and come back. I hope she does.
And that's all we have time for today. I want to say a big thank you to all of you for watching. If you did enjoy this video, please do like and subscribe. It does help the channel out a lot. Please do share this with anyone you think might like this sort of content. I want to say a big thank you to all 3 of my guests, David Ingram, Sean Harris, and Jack Parker. Their links will be in the description, as well as Lana, who has edited both this part and the previous part. Again, thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.